Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're going to be taking a look at these two copies that I was sent of Wormskin. So this is going to be issues 7 and 8, the two most recent issues of this old school D&D zine. Now, if you haven't been following along with my reviews of Wormskin, I've been doing reviews since the very beginning of this zine's history, and it's just been getting better and better over time. The basic summary here is that this zine chronicles a setting for old school D&D. Basically, it's a mythic forest with a lot of fairy tale influenced themes to it. So it's often very whimsical and very playful while mixing in a lot of darkness and evil sort of all blended together. So in these two issues, we're going to be looking at issue 7, which includes lots of new hexes because this is a hex crawl, and also issue 8, which goes into more of the background of Wormskin along with some procedures for camping and a bunch of interesting new monsters. So let's start off with this one over here. So issue 7, Hexmania. So it covers 21 new hexes. Now in previous issues, they'd looked at hexes before, but usually only 7 or so per issue. So this one greatly expands the number of hexes with detailed descriptions, which is going to greatly help anyone who wants to run a hex crawl throughout the entire forest. So this whole zine project is created by Gavin and Greg Gorgonmilk, and it features a lot of really excellent old school artists. The layout and the typography, as always, is excellent, a very common theme that we've seen from Necrotic Gnome Productions. So we start off with some common names in Dolmenwood. This is really great because we've had a lot of NPCs described before, but not just lists of names for all the common folk. This, again, will greatly help you in running hex crawls and long-term campaigns. So humans, we have male and female names with surnames, and elves, dwarves, or moss dwarves, wood grus, and so on. One thing I really like about the elves is the way that their names don't sound like typical elf names. In fact, they remind me much more of the type of elf names that you would see in books like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, or any sort of book that takes has a take on the fairies and the fae that is much more otherworldly. That's definitely how this book approaches it. So we have names like Wine by the Goblet or Gleanings from Lost Days. These very ethereal, very weird, almost alien names, like their names can't be pronounced or described in modern tongues. Grimalkin, clerics, fighters, thieves, magic users. I love how there are just titles, basically, that you can use to add on to your classes to make you feel more thematic. So some descriptions of the henchmen of Dolmenwood, how to find them, how to roll them up, getting into some basic details, and you can roll on this page to see how they're equipped, so you can make that really quick and easy. And the number that you roll also provides you with how much they cost per day, how much they're going to charge, because the higher the number is, the better that they're equipped. We have some basic tables for their personality and their ambitions. Great table that you can use for any NPCs, really. And we start getting into all of the hex descriptions. So we have one of a giant guarding an emerald tablet that you can try and take from him. One of the hexes is the Hamlet of Bolton, which is in fact covered in the Weird That Befell Bolton, which is a adventure set in one particular hex. So in order to run this hex, you'd have to get that adventure. I've covered that in the past as well. We have a number of witch-like encounters, along with some ruined towns, a toll bridge, some goat men that you can encounter, a barrow bog, and this points out here that if you are running the mega dungeon of Barrow Maze, which I've also talked about previously, this is a great place to stick that mega dungeon if you want to have that within this setting. It's a great little touch. I know that the author, Gavin has run Barrow Maze in Dolmenwood, so he definitely knows what he's talking about here. Some weird villages that you can encounter. The Golden Wood, so we have some places where you can find fairies. The Wench Gate, one of the entrances to Dolmenwood. The Vorpal Monolith, lots of really great names. the Nor stone. There's a theme throughout Dolmenwood of finding dolmens, these large standing stones, all of which have weird effects. In a previous issue of Wormskin, there are some extensive random tables for generating what these monoliths are like and what their effects are. We have some excellent little illustrations here that really capture the feel of Dolmenwood, at least in my head. It's slightly whimsical, a little bit playful, but also there's an element of darkness lying underneath. One of the locations is a gigantic titanic skull, the size of a massive hill. So it's from a titan that once strode the earth. We have the Port of Dreg in the Shantywood Isle. The illustration appears to be by Courtney Campbell, who did the Mega Dungeon Zine that I've looked at before. I can tell because of that dense textured look that he enjoys illustrating. The Dreaming Snail. And we get into some monsters of the wood. We have a revised format for how the monsters are presented here. They're usually all done on one page, which is really great. The format is much easier to read. I can tell that Gavin Norman has partially taken this from the BX Essentials line, which he is also writing, where he is formatting all of the basic and expert D&D rules into a much more succinct format. I see some of that coming out here. No illustrations for these monsters, unfortunately, apart from this one. But in the next book, we'll be seeing it has a lot more really great illustrations. Moss dwarfs, witches, and so on. Let's look at the next one. Pardon if I sound a little bit stuffed up. I've been having a cold for the last couple days. I think just on the tail end of it. All right, so this one covers a lot of information about witches. And so there's a large chunk of lore here. And by and large, it is really good. It gets right to the point. And Gavin's writing, as always, is just delightful to read. It pulls you in. It's very clear and succinct, but it has just enough flavor to make it a joy to read. There's often a little undercurrent of humor underneath the descriptions that I really like. We have how you get a witch, where they come from, what their practices are, and they're not quite like our modern day witches. There's definitely a twist on them in terms of where they get their powers from. We have some of their occult powers, the relationship to other factions. This is really excellent if you're running any sort of long-term campaign. You're going to need to know how all the different factions of the wood relate to one another. So I'm glad to see this here. Their schemes and goals, and a wide variety of rumors. There are so many rumor tables in Wormskin, which is something that I would love to see in many more books, because it gives you quick adventure hooks for pulling players in. And I like the way how they are not necessarily all true or all false. Sometimes there are shades of gray in between there, so that you can give players background on the setting without necessarily always giving them the exact truth. A lot of times what they hear are what people believe to be true, not necessarily what actually is true. Some rules on camping in Dolmenwood, which are very detailed for people who want a more closely realistic simulation of camping. For myself, it's a little bit too much. I would definitely tone it down or only use it in very particular circumstances. We have forest campsites. I really like this random table here. It is a D30 random table, and it just gives you enough information that when players camp for the night, you can give them something concrete and specific. So you're not just camping somewhere, with no particular details about your surroundings. It's always something specific, like a stretch of bracken and heather, or a clearing among fallen trees covered with lichen and moss. It's always something specific. And you can also add more features if you want it to have even more flavor. Strange Waters, a D30 table covering all sorts of streams and pools that you can find, along with possible magical effects that you can add if you want them to be a little bit more dangerous. And we have Monsters of the Wood, including the Brain Conch, which are these weird little creatures that crawl down trees in the middle of the night and suck your brain out. We also have Jack-o'-lanterns, and I really love how they all have an intelligence stat, but it's not a numerical stat. Instead, it is a actual description, like they're mischievous or alien or something similar. Great little illustrations here. These illustrations are done by Emma Lazowski, is I think how the name is pronounced. An ochre slime hulk. And what's really great is how all the monsters have a D6 table attached, where you can add additional little features on to make them all distinct from one another. Pook moral, that can cause frightening hallucinations that cause you to drop things that you're holding, and then they'll grab them and scurry off with them. And a wrong uncle, which is a really fun type of undead, technically, because it's a human-sized mushroom, essentially, that arises out of a dead body and carries along a lot of the memories of the creature that it grew from, and it will try to fulfill their wishes or try and find their home, and just be like this wanderer along the road that you can pick up and have join your party. But it's essentially a dead person's memory in mushroom form. We have a few advertisements at the back of the book here, including for Operation Unfathomable, which I am planning to review eventually once I get my hard copy all-in-one edition, which is something that I kickstarted, and the Midderlands, which I've looked at before. So there we go. Those are our 2 issues of Wormskin. All in all, it's a really great zine. It's so much fun to read. I love getting these in the mail and just adding it to my collection and getting a bigger and bigger picture of what the Force of Dolmenwood is like. Now, after issue 8, Wormskin is going to continue at some point in the future, but I think in between issue 8 and the continuation, there is plans in the works for possibly a larger set of Wormskin material, possibly in the form of a Kickstarter, where you may get a whole lot of information all together. So I'm really looking forward to getting more information about that, and I'll be sure to let you guys know once I have more information. But yeah, definitely Wormskin's going to continue, and I would collect them all because I've collected them all, and they are just really, really fun. They're great pieces of flavor, and they're a great example of how much you can dig into a setting in D&D, and how D&D doesn't have to be these flat, generic fantasy settings, but can have just a great amount of terror, and you can combine it with whimsy and humor, and all of those things can be together and can all feel like they're connected. I will put links down in the description below where you can get these as usual. I will also put a link to where you can get a compilation of all of the Wormskin material in print or in PDF in a one big combined package and save some money. So I'll put that down there as well. Now, join me next Wednesday for when I'm going to review this huge book, The Tome of Adventure Design, which is a massive book put out by Frog God Games. It's like, imagine Maze Rats, but turned up to 11. It's just hundreds of pages of detailed random tables for designing whole worlds and adventures. So it's really a landmark book that was really influential on me, and I'm really excited to take a look at it. Thanks especially should go out to my patrons, including David Horrocks and Robert Nadalin, who have pledged recently at a high level and are doing a fantastic job at helping me keep this channel going. Thanks so much, guys. You're the best. And that's it for this review today. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.